Education savings accounts, school vouchers, school choice. The conversation around state dollars potentially going to private schools is one of the most divisive issues the Texas legislature is facing this year.
Governor Abbott and proponents for school choice say the program could give parents more control and low-income or high-needs students the freedom to go wherever they want. But Democrats and some Republicans argue the idea is unfair and will ultimately defund public schools.
Texas teachers are really raising concerns about a top Republican priority this session, school voucher program.
Governor Abbott has been traveling the state pushing for what he calls the Parental Bill of Rights.
Send their children to any public school, charter school, or private school with state funding following the student.
We're not fully funded now, and you're talking about taking more money away.
Here with hundreds of other parents, they want to be empowered with the freedom to make the best educational choices for their own children.
We all want what's best for our kids, and what's best for our kids is to have access to good quality public education.
The governor has said he wants to call lawmakers back at another time to handle the school choice, school vouchers that he had been pushing for all session.
All right, so should state dollars go towards private schools? Who wants to start?
Sure, why not? I'm the public school person, so I'll start with that, being a superintendent. But so should accountability. So when I get state dollars as a superintendent and we collect local dollars and we get state dollars, we have accountability. We have transparency in our budgets. You get to see everything online. We report all that to the state. We take a state test. People hold us accountable. They rate us. So I don't have a problem with school choice. We are open for enrollment, so you can come in from outside the district. When we have space available, we will move you around inside the district if you'd like to. So school choice is fine. It's just that it needs to come with accountability. So.
Mandy, would you like to weigh in here?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, I'd say the number one entity or person that an education provider should be accountable to is the parent. We know our children and love them more than any school, any bureaucrat, any entity. And so we should be making the decisions. And I'm excited to hear you say that. That sounds like a confident answer from a school leader that realizes that school choice, this battle that is going on, let's be clear, it's been funded already. It's been appropriated for funded for $500 million. Now, does that sound like a lot of money to most people? Absolutely. But let's be real. We just appropriated enough money to take our total education spending to $96 billion. It's less than 1% of this. What we are talking about is empowering parents, those parents that need another choice, those parents whose child is being underserved. If you're one of the 75% of kids in 8th grade that can't do math, if your school has not provided the quality education, if they have not provided transparency into what's being taught and why, if you are a true believer in freedom and the power of people to choose, then you would support empowering parents with school choice. And to your question about funding, should public dollars go to private schools? They already do. Have we talked about the Pell Grant? Have we talked about the other scholarships that we give to kids to go to private schools, SMU, Baylor, whatever? Have we talked about the Head Start program that gives private dollars to schools? This is just a battle because it's about control. Control of, again, 0.5% of funding that would tell a parent, hey, if you can't afford to move to a high quality, wonderful, booming school district, if you can't afford to put your kid in a school, if you're unhappy, we support you. And that is something that, again, this should not be a battle. This is about parents and teachers locking arms, standing together and say, we want to serve kids. And when we do, the entire system will get better.
I love that she said parent accountability. That parents are really the folks that should be looking at the accountability of campuses. So then if that's the case with public dollars, then we need to get through the A through F and get rid of the A through F system, right? because it's a parent's choice where they go. So if you can take dollars to the private sector and go into a private university, use state dollars to do that, then that's a choice by the parent. So is it a choice for them to come to a public school? So why do we need this whole accountability system if those public dollars can be moved over into the private sector because of this whole thing on choice? So
I'm glad
just
you
saying that.
pointed that out. I said about parents, but I didn't get into the academic accountability. So part of the education savings accounts that so many legislators are pushing and parents are pushing, that's what they're hearing from their constituents. I know we've talked about this. Parents are talking about they want this. And so what is the academic accountability? Well, number one, if we look at who can receive an education savings account, it would be an accredited private school. Accredited private schools through one of the already accrediting bodies through the Texas Education Agency, they already have to take a norm reference test. Across our country, there's over half a dozen, they're called norm reference tests, whether it's the MAP or the Iowa Standard, whatever it is, so that parents can see, how is my kid actually doing? And when we talk about the state testing, look, if a school wants to offer it, fine. But again, this is about educating kids and being accountable. Because the problem is that a child that is not doing well, whether it's in his school district or anyone else's, if they don't have the funds to strike a check for a private school, they're not one of the lucky ones that get into an excellent charter school, they're just there. And we keep chronically failing. So the idea that we just do the same thing over and over again and that it's all about the money, it's patently false. And we see across the country that when you introduce private school choice to parents, the entire system gets better.
Cheyenne,
Great.
I'm curious
I
to
would
hear
say
from-
that that's a great. I would just say that that's a great point about the norm reference test. We don't have that option. We have to take a state accountability test, and that's not norm referenced, and it's just built in Texas. So I would love to have a comparison from our parents for norm reference tests. So if that's what we're going to do for private schools, why wouldn't we do that for public schools as well, so that we have a better subset? It just seems like there's two standards here. I'm great with the choice. I'm great with the charter school's choice. I'm great with the private school choice. But I think we need to be playing under a measurement that's equivalent. So, and that's a concern for me.
And just real quick, I want to be clear on something because people are like, should we bring school choice to Texas? I might say something here that's going to surprise some folks. We have school choice in Texas. If you're rich, you can send your kid wherever you want to send them. If you're poor, you cannot. And I firmly believe that school choice and education freedom is the civil rights issue of our time. There is nothing more immoral, unethical, or unfair than to say to a poor student in a poor family who just wants to have a chance at a quality life, and the most important thing to have that is to get a quality education. But to be trapped in one of the, while we have great public schools in Texas, as I said before, I'm a proud public school parent myself. My wife and I make the choice to send our kids to our great local public schools. Not every Texan has that choice. As I mentioned, only 24% of Texas 8th graders can read and do math on grade level. My guess is you would say that your school district is a great public school as well. Do you know what percentage of your students can read at grade level?
I would tell you that
Do you
it
know
depends
the
on
number?
it depends on what accountability system you're working on.
Let's
So-
use the one that you do use. What percentage of your students?
And not
We're
to
gonna
cut you
stop
off
you
here,
just
we
for a
need
quick
to just
second.
hear from a few others if we can have.
The answer is 53%. I'll answer that. I know the answer.
Cheyenne, let's hear from you. You're at a rural school district. Tell us what this might look like there.
So listening to the parent that asked the question on the screen earlier was hopeful, because there are still parents out there that do believe in public education, and she wants the absolute best for the public education systems we have in place. And you know, she talked about, what do you do with the kids that are just there, the kids that aren't they're not doing well, but they're just there. We don't have a choice. We still have to educate those kids. And when you hear about dollars going to the private sector, it's unfortunate, because we don't have a choice. And I am in a rural school district, and bringing the private vouchers and having that's not available to that won't be available to my students. Where are they going to go? There's a private school right up the road. From what I understand, 2 of the grade levels were already at capacity. And so that's not an option for us. And so hearing and talking about the dollars that we have now, we just spent a whole section on funding and how public schools aren't being funded appropriately. And now we're looking at taking the dollars we don't have and that we do need, and sending that to a private vector it's disappointing.
And we do have a parent question that we'd like to hear from here real quick.
Hey y'all, my name is Daphne Hoffacker. I'm the parent of a dyslexic 9th grader who deserves to be fully supported in his local public schools, surrounded by his neighborhood friends. So my question is for policymakers. Given the overwhelming opposition to vouchers/ESA this session, why are we still talking about this?
Now, she mentions overwhelming opposition, but there is support for this. The Texas Politics Project conducted a survey and found 58% of participants in support of voucher, ESA, or school choice. How do you respond? Let's start with Representative Harrison here.
Look, it's overwhelmingly popular in the state of Texas, and there's no question about that. A majority of Republicans support education freedom, a majority of independents, and a majority of Democrats, and a majority of urban dwellers want it, as do people that live in the most rural parts of the state. When this was put on the ballot 2 years ago, and not to make this partisan, but it's a data point we've got, in the 10 most rural counties in the state of Texas, which, by the way, are overwhelmingly Republican, when those voters went to the polls, not one of the 10 most rural counties in the state of Texas supported education freedom by less than about 85%. And in fact, 9 of the 10 most rural states in America have some form of school choice. Now look, I don't have the most rural district in the state of Texas, but I've got a district that is mostly rural, where I've got multiple school districts that have less than 1,000 kids, where they're the biggest employer in their state. And I hear this argument all the time that, well, we shouldn't do it because there's not a lot of alternatives out here in rural Texas. But if that's true, then it can't also be true that in any way, shape, or form, rural public schools would be harmed by this. Okay, and here's the most important thing that we always have to go back to. Who should be the person that makes the decision for where, when, and how an individual child is educated? And I believe with all of my heart that it is the parent that at the end of the day, the state of Texas needs to prioritize and support, because I've got 4 children. The idea that all 4 of them have the same needs and learning aptitudes and interests as the other are absolutely ridiculous. I choose to send my kids to public schools. I've got public school teachers in my family, and I've got public school teachers that I'm good friends with who send their children to private school. There are families where the public school is the perfect solution for 2 or 3 of their kids, but for one kid, especially if we're talking about socioeconomic or special needs children, they need maybe a slightly different environment where their needs can be tailored and curated to make sure that every child in the state of Texas receives a quality education.
May I?
Yes, of course.
What's important to remember in this conversation is the choice doesn't belong to the parent. The choice belongs to the private school. The private school gets to decide under a voucher scheme, under an ESA scheme, whether or not your child fits the bill. Does your child score high enough on a test? Is your child the right religion? Does your child have a disciplinary record? On and on and on. Is your child the right fit for our school? So it's a misnomer to call this parental choice, right? It's the school's choice. It's gimmicky. When you ask parents out there, when you poll, I don't know what partisan polls the representatives is referring to, or ballot initiatives. What I know is parents assume when you talk about parental choice and getting a voucher that they're going to be able to choose whatever school they want to and have money to pay for the tuition, when we know lots of the most popular private schools charge a tuition that is well out of reach of what the state has contemplated offering in a voucher. Again, it's not the parent's choice. I grew up in a Title I public school. I sent my kids to Title I schools. So many of our families would never be able to take advantage of a voucher or an ESA, or even for a charter school for that matter, because they do not, again, fit the bill for the charter school, right? The charter school gets to choose who those children are. Our public schools, our neighborhood schools, our ISDs are the only schools that take all kids. They are required by our state constitution, different from colleges, right? This is a requirement for our, that is fundamental, foundational in this state. And we are not fulfilling that requirement. We are not funding our public schools.
If we could hear Representative Van Dever, I just want to hear your thoughts on this topic as well.
You know, we hear a lot about parental choice, and I think we all agree that the parent should be in control of their child's education, and I believe the parent has an opportunity to do that in a public school. Our public schools are independent school districts. We have elected boards that govern our local schools. And so we have the opportunity for our parents to be involved in that process. But I will say, I'm open to the conversation because I do know that we have students who, for whatever reason, maybe just can't find the fit. And so I'm open to a conversation, but around that conversation, again, to some of the other comments, does the voucher completely pay for tuition to the private school? I think that should be a requirement, that if a private school is going to take a voucher child, they can't charge additional tuition. If the private school takes a voucher child, do they get to choose which voucher children they take? No, they should take all vouchers if they take any. They should take the same test public school children are taking. I'm looking for a level playing field. I'm open to the conversation, but we need to make sure we're not tilting the table in favor of one or the other. We need a level playing field.